ki te uru, whakatakata hou ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. Ehi aki ana te atakura. He tio, he huka, he hou, tihe Māori ora. So thank you everybody for coming along. This is really excited about today's webinar brought by TEL, but hopefully we've been joined by people across our various sectors, because user experience, I think, is a great tool in the toolkit for any library, regardless of whether you're dealing with 5-year-olds or 50-year-olds and above. Any rate, I want to introduce our presenters. We have 3 presenters from 2 universities. Our first 2 presenters representing Victoria University of Wellington is Sonya and Bridey. Bridey is part of the library's client services team. She, as part of that, she is the first point of contact for patrons, and she helps with the general and library specific inquiries, as well as referrals to other university departments. Her team spearheads UX research and development related to the physical library spaces and frontline services. And she is joined by her colleague Sonya, who works as the library engagement coordinator. She promotes the digital and physical collection spaces, services and expertise across a selection of platforms to reach their varied clients. As chair of the library's UX advisory committee, she co-designs user testing for library systems, physical spaces and services. So welcome to Sonya and Bridey.
You're muted, Siobhan.
When did I mute? How long have I been muted for? Not the whole thing, tell me.
No, just after our intros, yeah.
Okay, right. I'll start again at Jacinda. So Jacinda works at the University of Otago in the client services team. That team has a focus on providing excellent customer service. She specifically oversees the interloans and the provision of support and services to distance students. She also spearheads a thesis digitisation project. Her role is wide and varied and requires collaboration across library departments and across libraries. In recognition of Jacinda's customer service focus, she was selected in 2022 to coordinate and lead a user experience working group to implement a 2-year trial of UX research methodology at the University of Otago Library. So welcome, Jacinda. So we're going to start with Sonya and Bridey's presentation, and then Jacinda will present, and then we have factored in time at the end for lots of Q&A that can be directed at any of our 3 presenters. So I am now going to mute my mic and start the slides for Sonya and Bridey.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Hi, thanks, Siobhan. Tēnā koutou katoa, I'm Sonya. I'm the engagement coordinator here at Te Pātaka Kōrero, the library at Wellington University, Te Herenga Waka. And Siobhan is going to conduct my slides for me. And here is the first one. And then we're going to take away my camera so that we can rummage through our notes nervously, if that's okay. Okay. So I'm going to momentarily distract you with this title slide that I placed up on a large digital screen at our Kelburn Library entrance alongside some promotions of our collection. What does this have to do with academic libraries? Well, absolutely nothing, aside from the fact that over orientation this year, I asked my national network of academic library staff what posts get the most hits for them. And I also put myself into the mindset of a reluctant, perhaps first in family, first time library user. And I thought, how can I help to present the library as a welcoming space, giving them a sense of belonging? And the conclusion was a kitten. It's actually a video, Siobhan, if you want to click through, it might start playing. I cannot tell you the buzz this created at the entrance. There were students standing around waiting for the slideshow to loop around and slides and selfies and photos, and so I considered that mission accomplished. And a small example of how a user focused mindset may seem a little off the wall and peculiar, But if you're willing to make a minuscule, courageous step outside of the norm to consider your users, the responses and results are really rewarding. So if you flick to the next slide there, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to speak to you all today about our UX antics. I'll chat about what UX is to us and how we're using it to our advantage. Then Bridey will present a real life case study coming at you from our front-facing client services team. So next slide. I'm just going to be answering these 5 FAQs. So the first one is, what is UX? And I don't really know what all of you know and what you don't. So I'll take it back to basics initially. UX, meaning user experience. It's a marketing approach. It's how users, digital or physical, interact with and experience our resources, our spaces, our systems, and our services. It's finding out their preferences, their approaches, and their behaviours to better serve them. It's collating what we know and what we don't to make decisions around how and with what to reach them. So why do we need UX? Well, without knowing our users' behaviours and attitudes and preferences, we quickly start making massive assumptions on how to reach them, with what information and when, or perhaps use outdated information. Well, I'm a graduate. I know what it was like in the 90s at Victoria Uni, for example. Maybe it's about the same. Well, yes and no. We're not trying to give solutions to problems that I had. We're trying to find solutions for our current users. To do that, we need to know who they are. Are they undergrad? Are they postgrad? Are they academics in various faculties and campuses with the different reasons for accessing the library? Not to mention the different demographics of users with different values. Māori, Pacifica, international students, a law student versus a design student, an interactive kind of group study learner versus an independent, quieter studier. And what resources are they going to use? So where did it all start for us? That's question 3. Part of my role is creating content for our social media platforms and digital screens like Facebook, Instagram, and the screen that I put that slide up on before. I needed to know who I was speaking to. What does the foot traffic want to see? Well, surely someone knows our users and what channels they prefer. It's no mystery. They're downstairs. They're sitting on chairs and studying at our desks and browsing our shelves. And I also discovered an old legacy file on SharePoint, a massive study conducted in 2017 here at VUW Library from someone who had since left. They had interviewed an academic, a postgrad, and an undergrad from each faculty and school and gathered their library experiences. Mostly positive. They love us. They love us. So there are also university-wide surveys conducted that gather more intel about each of our clients. Again, library ranks top as a university service. That's a good start. Now, how do we communicate with each one of these users to update all of this intel? At which point we came to a bit of a grinding halt, didn't know how to do that. So enter Andy Priestner. We had a workshop in November 22 that highlighted to us how quick and easy and telling it is to trot downstairs to our pool of users with a clipboard, asking questions around study space usability, furniture placement, displays, wayfinding, and ask them what they think using different methods. So if you can flick to the next slide, Siobhan, this shows, might be a bit blurry. Okay, the UX research design process, that's the UX process. And it's kind of in 2 groups. The first group is finding out all the information about the problem and about the users and how they're going to be interacting with that particular issue. And then the right side is the ideation process, the figuring out, the piloting of it, the design of it. And really a lot more time is spent on the left than on the right, finding out what the problem is. So a problem will trigger this process. The first thing when a problem arises is being open. We can't be stuck in a fixed position because of a past success or a past failure. We must be open to discover what the actual issue is and different methods to approach this problem. when we find out that our users have a problem, that's usually me, I jump to a quick conclusion. I don't know how to use the printers, for example. So I race upstairs and I design a poster. But we discover that the tracked QR code on the poster that I designed is only scanned twice. So this kind of result shows that I jump to ideation, which is right in the middle, and without really massaging out what the problem was. What are they actually wanting to know? Is it how to print? Is it where the printers are? Is it how to change to A3? Is it how to put credit on my account? And once you start asking questions, you then can group them by theme. So maybe their problem is where they are having this problem. Maybe they're down at the law library or commerce library or the architecture and design library or up here at Kelburn. You may discover that your solution is fourfold for the different locations. You may discover that the problem you thought you had is not the problem at all. The final stage is then gathering all this intel and then piloting your ideas and tracking the uptake. So the next slide is who the crew is that runs this work. That's right. So who's involved? We were wanting to move through these kind of processes for a number of different problems. So it was important to stop and consider where UX fitted into our BAU. Who would be giving their time to do it? What we discovered is if you have one person, like a person like me in engagement or a marketing comms person, running it all, they don't see everything. They don't see the back-end coding issues. They don't have all the front-facing conversations with our users. So we put together a UX advisory group, and we have a rep from each team and a manager to oversee and bring things back to the leadership team. And I chair it, and I run agendas and schedules and meetings and team chats for updates on projects. So that's how we've run it. It has a terms of reference as well, just to kind of guide us. And that's how we've launched that. So last question is, what are we doing now? Teams are sharing problems, which is great. And they're presenting their findings to the advisory group. Sometimes the advisory group approaches a team and asks them to observe issues and ask questions at the coalface. Weekly walkthroughs to monitor wayfinding and observations help to provide snapshots of user behaviour to flesh out what we can do on different floors and in different libraries. The communication about problems is opening up, and staff and management are finding it more comfortable to approach problems, gather in the data and intel from all kinds of sources across the university, and are able to take the no, which is a really important part. No for all different kinds of reasons. No for optics. No for, well, there's another project going on at that time. And to bring people along on the journey is a really important part in becoming user-focused. So if you flick to the next slide, I'm going to hand you over to Bridey. She'll take you through her case study.
Kia ora. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm Bridey. I am representing client services in our UX project that we conducted, started last year and is ongoing. Like Sonya said, we have done some UX projects in the past. They were a lot more specific than anything we were doing now, and they were very focused towards our website. So not at all really focused on like physical spaces, which was kind of where my team is more situated. And it was also, I think, pre-COVID. So we really were dealing with a whole other landscape of users and totally different problems. So we kind of tried to open and approach this with a really open mind, starting as broad as possible, not afraid to make mistakes. Obviously that would give us a lot more hurdles, or different hurdles than if we had started more specifically, but I digress. So our first kind of issue in kind of deciding how we would structure our UX project was, and especially the research, was negotiating being distracting versus engaging. We work with students who are very focused and more often than not find themselves quite stressed. They have particular things that they need to be doing in the library, and we don't want to distract them from that. But we also recognize that in their stress, they are maybe looking for some time off, some kind of stress management things. And then in that way, UX research can really kind of provide that. So we found that in order to kind of navigate that, I don't know, barrier, giving them choices, giving them the choice to participate was actually the key. We used intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. So intrinsic being they're stressed, they're studying, they'd like a break. And that just kind of brought them to us without us really having to do much. Extrinsic was chocolate. We had chocolate for them. Yeah, that was just a good like kind of icebreaker. Do you want to come over, answer some questions for us, give you a piece of chocolate? Yeah, we found that honestly it was just better for research as well, having them wanting to be there and kind of coming towards us. Just they had more time for us and they had more time to think, and yeah, they kind of wanted to be there with us, so that was really helpful. Our next kind of hurdle was deciding on how specific we were going to make our research. Having kind of part of having like no preconceptions of our demographic meant starting broad. That was just kind of a necessity of the project. We didn't know what their needs immediately were. We can always try and figure it out, but we wanted to really just kind of keep an open mind. So that kind of meant that like on our graffiti wall, questions that we had included, how can we support you in your studies? And what would you like to see in this space? So really broad, kind of the only specific thing was, you know, in this space, bringing it to a physical spaces kind of level, is that we're interested in that. But how can we support you in your studies? Literally the only thing that's really specific about that is your studies. How can we help you in that area? It was really helpful because it kind of got straight to the point of what students are thinking. We didn't need to make them think about things that we're thinking, you know, ask them questions that they have no idea like about, doesn't relate to them at all. So that was really good. It gave us direction for later research. We know a lot more about, yeah, kind of what they do have in mind and things that we might have been thinking. We were kind of like, oh, they're not thinking about that at all. So we can either work on that more in the background or work with them further. It also reminded us that students often have very different priorities than we'd expect. They literally, a lot of them said that they wanted food, which was not something that we were at all thinking that they would do, but I mean, it makes sense given the economy and also the fact that they're students. So it's important to know that about our users. Downsides were, of course, that we had 916 data points, only some of which were relevant to my team and things that we are able to achieve. And that took time to sort through. But I think even though that it took a little bit longer, on the whole, I think it was really good that we had that much data. We were able to get results relevant to other teams, data that we could just hand over, and things for possible projects down the line. So one of the feedback kind of points that we received was that our study room bookings are only available for 30 minutes. Students wanted them to be available for up to an hour or more. So I took that to Brendan, our manager of systems and integration development team, And he kind of just said that the bookings were supposed to be an hour already. So really it wasn't really something that we needed to argue for. It was just a problem that the students had actually just spotted for us. So that was a really good thing about keeping it broad. Keeping it broad kind of also brings me to my second and kind of last point, is that we really had no idea what kind of research method we thought would suit us more. So we kind of used them all. We tried to apply as many as possible. This includes the breakup letters. Students write a breakup letter to the library, kind of listing their maybe grievances or reasons that they don't want to be with, quote unquote, the library anymore. Card sorting, cognitive mapping, graffiti walls, observations, and we had our own kind of mini version of a guerrilla interview, where we would ask students and patrons who had come to the service point, that we would ask them their magic wand question, which was just saying, if you had a magic wand that could miraculously bring or change anything about the library, what would you change? So just one question, but yeah, magic wand, literally very broad. We found that attitudinal kind of data was a lot more relevant to what we were trying to achieve. Their needs and wants and how they kind of liked and what they liked and disliked about the library was a lot more valuable to what we had in mind for kind of contributing and creating for them. Behavioral data was just played a smaller role in overall what we were doing. And out of those observational research methods, we found that card sorting and cognitive mapping did not work as much. We were really excited about card sorting initially, but it was a lot harder to categorize and quantify. So yeah, the looking at cognitive mapping after, or a month after we had collected that data, it was really confusing to make sense of any of those results. And card sorting we found was so specific to each participant that any kind of crossing or categorizing, putting it into a spreadsheet with other pieces of data was just near impossible. So we kind of scrapped that, but we did keep our observations, literally just standing on the floor for about an hour, marking and just kind of keeping note of what students were doing. We found that was a lot more effective. We also had some behavioral data in our guerrilla interviews where we just asked, how often do you come to the library? So that was good behavioral data that we got, and that was useful and again quantifiable. So very happy with that. Yeah, I think kind of the end result with that though was that less was definitely more. And yeah, starting broad. It's kind of that. Yeah, thank you.
So if you flick through a few of those slides, you'll see some of the research being conducted. And keep going, Siobhan. And there's just some things that you can work through when you get the slides. And the last slide. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. And we'll now put our camera back on. And you can see that we do actually look like our avatars. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Sonya. If people do, there is a chat, and Hannah is keeping an eye on it. But before we go to Q&A, we'll invite Jacinda now to share her screen and participate, and then we can do Q&A as one big lot at the end. So over to you, Jacinda.
Hey. All right. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Jacinda Boivin, tōku ingoa, he kaitiaki puka puka o te whare wananga Otago. So my name is Jacinda Boivin and I'm a librarian at the University of Otago and I am based in Dunedin. We have 6 libraries in Dunedin. We also have libraries in Christchurch, Wellington and Invercargill, so quite spread out. In June 2023, I had the opportunity to attend a UX Libraries Conference in the University of Sussex in Brighton. This was attended by 175 delegates from 21 countries. I was the only person from New Zealand and there was 1 person from Australia. And the theme of the conference was connections and collaborations. So I was really surprised at the conference, and perhaps shouldn't have been, by the common themes and topics of discussion, which also resonates a bit with what Sonya in particular has just mentioned. So one of the very popular topics for presentations was the usefulness of having a working group to coordinate and oversee UX activity within the library, rather than making it just the responsibility of 1 person. And given the conference theme of connections and collaborations, it was not surprising to see that there was a lot of support to develop communities of practice, to share information, ideas and resources to support each other with UX research. The award for best paper from the conference went to Alison Sharman, who won for her paper talking about building a community of practice among academic libraries in the north of England. And that was a really interesting talk. So other themes included using UX research design right from the beginning of a new build process, as well as reconfiguring and reimagining spaces. There was lots of discussion about ensuring libraries have spaces to cater for neurodiverse library users and the importance of creating these spaces with library users rather than for them. And that was a strong theme. A number of the libraries had 24-hour opening, but post-COVID we're finding that the numbers in the libraries had reduced and they were reviewing and looking at reducing their hours. And many of the universities were reporting new builds or reconfiguring spaces that didn't include books, but were still called libraries, often a library annex. Some of the other themes, I won't read through them all, but you can have a look there. And so many of these things were things that we had been talking about here. So we've talked about calm spaces, we've talked about including more plants, individual study rooms. And a number of the libraries in the UK were talking about offering warm spaces. So free community venues where people could go and stay warm. So given our location, the southern end of New Zealand, that's something that resonates with us as well. So some of the key insights were that testing with 1 person is 100% better than testing with none, and that you don't have to have a really, really large sample size to get results. And that before we do anything, we should be asking ourselves, have we asked the students? Yeah, that's the key focus of UX activity. So and with that, the role of the UX coordinator is to advocate for the student voice and to involve the students in identifying the issue, but also designing solutions, which can be quite difficult, and just to get out there and give it a go. So the next UX Libraries Conference is in Cambridge with the theme of curiosity and empathy, and expressions of interest to attend are now open. So I would recommend, if anyone had the chance, it was a really worthwhile conference to attend with lots of information and ideas to come home with. So now I want to talk a little bit about what we've been doing at the University of Otago. So we are relatively new to a formal program of UX activity. And again, in November 22, Andy Presner was in Dunedin and provided training for 13 library staff. And as a result of the training, the library adopted the user experience research and design framework developed by Andy to actively involve library users in the design and continuous improvement of library services. We set up a user experience working group with staff from across the library, which is led by me and overseen by Siobhan. And the working group initially will operate during 2023 and 24 to coordinate the implementation of UX research and the design framework. We're focusing on how our customers use library services, but especially the physical spaces. So our focus is on our physical libraries rather than online at this time. So Andy's framework focuses on using an evidence-based model to develop library services that are useful, usable, and desirable. I really recommend his handbook, which is the cover is there on the left. We have a couple of copies of this book if anybody did want to interloan it. But it is a really practical guide to starting out in UX research. And on the right of that page is the kind of the outline of the framework, which includes 9 research techniques and 3 design techniques from Andy's toolkit. And each of those in the book is explained how to implement. So when we started really low tech with a graffiti board or a graffiti wall. We put up large sheets of white paper on boards with pens near the library entrance. And we asked the students 2 questions. What does the library do well and what could we do better? We got some praise, but mainly we got pages and pages of things the students thought that we could be doing better. The benefit of this method is that users can freely and anonymously provide feedback, but the responses are casual and less guarded. So we did get some very interesting suggestions as well. So what we did after that was we transcribed the comments onto individual post-it notes and we grouped them into themes. Some things were out of our scope or beyond our control. We passed those on where we could, but this activity framed a lot of the further UX work that we did during the year. So you can see that on the right there, there's a theme about toilets. So we had a lot of feedback about the cleanliness, the toilet paper, the design of the urinals. So things that we had never heard about before, and we got a lot of feedback. So we were able to pass that on. It became really obvious early on that the biggest issue was poor Wi-Fi in our central library. So Central Library sits about 2,500 people. And if you think that each of those people comes in probably with at least 2 devices, a phone and a laptop, huge Wi-Fi pull. So again, low tech, we printed off some floor plans and we asked the students to indicate where the Wi-Fi was poor. We were trying to identify if it was just issues. I don't know how well you can see that, but basically everywhere the Wi-Fi was poor. So we were able to talk to our ITS team. We were able to demonstrate the feedback from the students. And within weeks, we had 45 new Wi-Fi access points installed in the library. So it was really low tech, really simple, but we gathered evidence really quickly and we will be able to quickly act on that. I'm just going to really gloss over some of the other things that we did. Cleanliness improvement. So again, the toilets, we were able to respond to that. Promoting inclusivity. We installed pride flags at all of our branch libraries to signify our commitment to creating welcoming spaces for all students. So we worked with students on that. I visited our Southern Campus Library, which is a small library with just 1 staff member, and we carried out cognitive mapping where we asked students to draw what the library means to them and also carried out some interviews with students. So the focus of that was to actually focus on our physical areas, but interestingly, all of the pictures drew the library staff member. And so it became really obvious that it was really important, the role of having somebody in that library. This is actually a picture of her and she loved that. We also found out from that initial graffiti board that lots of our students didn't know we had fiction or recreational reading And in fact, on some of our libraries, on the floor that you enter the library, there are no books. So we've started doing book displays to promote our book collection. And this display here was fiction recommended by library staff. At the moment, we have a neurodiversity display, and so that was the display was created with students from our neurodiverse communities. So again, working with students on the solution. We undertook a huge piece of research in our central library using observations to map and identify the study spaces and furniture preferred by students. We also carried out guerrilla interviews to understand why the students chose particular spaces. And here in this picture, we did a graffiti wall photo study where we provided photos of various areas and furniture, and we asked students to write comments about what they liked or disliked about those spaces. And we included some possible new furniture as well. And it was a huge piece of work, and we got really great information. And already as a result, we've repurposed some of the areas that were identified as being underutilised. We've purchased more suitable furniture for those areas, and those areas are now better used by the students. So really big piece of work, but really quick results, and we were able to make changes quickly as a result. Library engagement, we did a fun and engaging activity which the students loved, which was we had voting, Perspex voting boxes and table tennis balls, and we would ask students to vote on really random questions. And we did it as a fun activity, but we did get some really good information out of it. So one of the questions we asked were the students how many hours they were expecting to spend in the library. So 1 to 3, 3 to 5, more than 5. And a majority of the students said that they expected to spend more than 5 hours in the library today. So, which is really interesting when you think you really need to consider the environment, the furniture, ergonomics, if students are spending that long in your space, and things like food, access to hot water, things like that. And we tried a library fix-it form. So one of the things also raised by students was that there was broken or dirty furniture and they didn't know how to report or what to do about that. So we tried a fix-it form. And last but not least, we got SPCA volunteers from the dog squad to bring library dogs into the libraries over a lunchtime. So we used observations and guerrilla interviews to assess whether this was useful, usable and desirable, and overwhelmingly the students loved it. At times we had queues of people, so that was really, really successful. Okay, what next? Soon we'll be repeating the graffiti board exercise that we started at the start about this time last year to get the students to identify areas that we could do better. And hopefully that will again give us some framework for further activity. We are looking at replacing our physical service desks at 5 of our libraries in Dunedin. So we'll be working with using UX with library staff and also our users to talk about the type of furniture and the placement of that furniture. So that's a big piece of work coming up. And we are looking at creating a chill out or a space within the libraries and implementing some of, as business as usual, some of the successful trials that we've had over the last year. Lessons learned. It's been a bit of a challenge. We are new to this of going from a successful prototype or trial to implementation. So once you've demonstrated that an idea is successful, getting it to that next step to making it business as usual. And also thinking one of the things that we didn't think about, for example, during the fix-it form that we were trialing, what does success look like? So if we get 5 reports in a week, is that success, or does it need to be 50 reports in a week? So yeah, just thinking about, we get very excited about trialing things, but we do need to think about what will it look like when it's successful. The majority of UX activity happens during semester when library staff are busy, so it has been difficult at times to get to have staff available to support UX research. Take lots of photos. So a lot of what we're doing is really cool and very visual, but I didn't have many photos. So it's a reminder to me, and especially when you're reporting back to management or to library colleagues, a photo, because it's 1,000 words or something. So yeah. And everything that we've done so far has been free or very low cost, very low tech, but it does give you really, really good results and actionable research or evidence-based research. And I would just suggest just give it a go. And then finally, just a quote about UX. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jacinda, and also thank you to Bridey and Sonya. I imagine there might be a few questions out there. Hannah, have we had any so far over chat? Okay.
Yeah, we've got a couple here from Adrian. So one of them is, it's probably more maybe a management question, but it's what if our available staffing doesn't allow for as long hours or services as our users would like? That is a problem we have faced, they say. So I know I think that might have come up at Vic as well. So students wanting longer hours, with like staff on the desk, but yeah, I guess. Yeah, it did come up here, and one strategy that we worked on was an online chat service, so a chat bot essentially to cover the bases. Yeah, especially over long weekends or public holidays, and especially during staffing issues. Yeah, because it was definitely one for when we were closing some campuses earlier, so meant that ones at other campuses who were staffed could actually reply to those queries. Another question from Adrian is kind of broaching on the digital space, but has anyone considered UX for distance students' needs? Yeah. I don't think we've done anything for distance students yet, have we?
I don't think so. I think there was, when I was sharing URLs to our discovery system, to our catalogue, I was reminded to use a change in the URL to appropriate it for distant learners, but that was really it. Most of our digital users use the same system, whether they're in our library or not. So.
There was a question from Lenore for Jacinda, I think this one was. How do you manage book displays that are engaging with increasingly digital collections? And did you have to put money into purchasing specifically with this in mind?
Siobhan might want to chime in on this one as well. We didn't spend any money for any of the displays. We used some existing furniture for physically mounting the displays. And on our most recent display, we have a QR code which links to other resources relating to the book, just the physical book display that we have. And we have a new team member in the library, digital initiatives, I think, who will be working with closely as well to sort of combine the physical book displays and linking it to digital and online platforms as well. So it's an area that we just kind of entering into.
I think I did see it in the chat. There's another, I put something in, and I think there's another couple of people who had some ideas for that as well, which is quite cool. There's a question here from Steph. She asked, did you close the loop by letting students know the outcome of the UX feedback / input?
We did. We put it up on our Facebook page. There was one around the law library needing more PowerPoints. And so once the work was done, look at what we did. It was a bit of a pat on the back for us, but also, hey, we're listening to you too, you know?
Yeah. And we did, oh, sorry.
I think that was also part of making sure that we took up room on the day that we did the initial research, was being so visible that like there was maybe like more to, it was like that visibility in itself was a commitment to completion and staying in touch
To
with
follow
them.
through,
Sorry, with our Wi-Fi, installing additional Wi-Fi points. So again, we used our big pieces of paper to let students know that they had reported poor Wi-Fi. We told them when it was planned to happen, and then we told them when the new Wi-Fi points had been installed. So we did it that way. We also had digital signs in the library, and we have used them a little bit. We went live with a Diversify Your Library initiative recently, so we've been using whiteboards to promote that. So yes, we don't have Facebook at the moment, I don't think. We've limited now. Had some issues with that.
There is another question in here. Does anyone have experience of wider university management being supportive of UX in the library space? And I can say for us, as far as I know, there is support from the wider university. So there's a lot of this, there's a lot of support for this from our senior leadership team, who really like what we're doing and like what client service are doing. And I know that also comes from above them in the university chain. But I don't know if anyone else has comments on that.
I mean, I'm more than happy to chime in as I work at the associate university librarian level. I think there's a bit of a sea change that's occurring in tertiary libraries around not just tertiary institutions, around a broader sense of how do we define success? And yes, academic success is incredibly important when you go to university, but it's also about successfully supporting people to become the best person for them. And what that means is, providing a success in terms of well-being and belonging and sustainability and lifelong learning and all these other things. And so in terms of the library, it's about, how do we collaborate in partnership with our students and our staff in order to expand how we are supporting the people who come in, not just simply so they get the stuff that they need to be successful academically, but so that they actually feel welcome, that they feel that this is a place where they can be themselves and be successful in whatever way that is meaningful to them, particularly for our underrepresented and underserved communities. And some of them are coming directly from the government, like if you look at the Learner Success Plan that the TEC is supporting many universities to work towards. The groups such as Māori Pacific and groups and disabilities are particularly being elevated to these have been underrepresented and underserved for so many years. We really need to think about, and so how do we support them? And I guess all this means that we are looking at my level, at that kind of executive level, we are looking at ways that we can enable taking the strategic and what does it look like operationally. And for us, UX fits within that. It's not the only tool in our toolkit, but it certainly is a really, really useful tool in our toolkit that we can use in order to take these aspirational goals and think about, well, how do we talk to our students about, well, what would make you more comfortable in the library? What would make you more comfortable using this resource? What do you not know about that we could potentially support you to know about? How can we meet you rather than try to make you to meet us? So yeah.
Another question here from Jessica. How many active participants do you have in your UX advisory groups?
10.
10 for Vic.
So there's a manager and a chair, and then eight others.
6 in our user group, working group.
Cool.
We did have a couple of questions around this, probably more for Siobhan. Can we have the slides after the presentation?
Short answer, yes.
Yes, fantastic. We'll sort that. Oh yeah, Angela has also answered that. Thank you. Cool, that's all I can find in the chat for questions. If I've missed any or anyone else has a question or something they want to say, please do. Oh, here we go. From Haley, where does the library stop with UX? I'm surprised that it even came down to furniture preference. Yeah, that's probably a good one for Sonya to answer, maybe.
Oh, hospital pass, Hannah. Oh, okay. When does it stop? Well, when you don't have any more users. It's a real marketing approach, and so as long as you have a user using your library, you have to consider them and what they want. And we've got such an assortment of clients with different reasons to approach the library. You know, an academic working over at law, needing to use TELUS and struggling with a teaching issue. You know, they approach the library for all sorts of different reasons, and so we've got to be pliable to be able to accept that they are having problems and that we can help them however we can. I guess that's the answer. And yeah, furniture. Although it does cross into, you know, property services. You know, the couches aren't mine. We can do things. They do have different loan schemes and different furniture available, and placement is actually really important, especially like Jacinda said, people are in there for 5+ hours. That's redonkulous, isn't it? I mean, you really have to think about their whole person, the warmth of the place, the inviting nature of the place, and how they're going to be using your space.
Definitely the minutia of an experience.
Yeah, because I think as well, like a lot of our students, what they really think of with the library is actually the physical space, right? Like that's what they are really using. They don't often, a lot of them don't think they're using the library, but they are. Like when they're searching for articles on Google Scholar, it is us. But you know, a lot of what they do care about is food, warmth, comfy seating, that they can talk with their mates and hang out with their friends in a comfortable space. That kind of stuff really comes through. There was
I think, sorry, I was just going to add, and that is why I think UX is quite universal, because if you asked, I'm sure, and please, I've got public library and school library colleagues on board, put me wrong, but I'd imagine that you could equally say that, you know, when people enter the public library or the school library, it's the same thing. They're looking for warmth and comfort and a great place to chat with their mates, etc. I think that's universal.
There's a question from Jasmine. Were there any groups that you had difficulty getting to engage with UX?
Yeah. Our community borrowers make up a far smaller percentage of our demographics that are just walking in daily. So of the people that we actually got to engage with, most of them were students. Most of those students were undergrads. We had some staff members and some postgrads, but our community borrowers are really something. And obviously, like distance learners, like distance students, they're not walking through the door to a physical space where we can ask them things. So that is a demographic that we need to revisit. Totally. Oh, and alumni.
Yeah. Just going to say
Yes. Yeah. And all of our UX activity has been done with people who are physically in the buildings. We've talked about, but we haven't done anything yet about people who aren't library users to try and find out why they're not coming into the library. And again, we haven't done anything with distance students, but partly because we deliberately decided early on that for the first 2 years we would focus on our physical spaces. So that will happen down the track. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to reply and read at the same time. There's one in here. There's a question that is, it says, sorry that if I missed this, but did you conduct any UX with specific groups, e.g. students who have Asperger's? it crossed my mind that certain groups have very specific needs, or did you just invite general comments in order to identify their needs?
Definitely started. Yeah, we did not target. We started as broad as possible. Obviously, like something like accessibility is immediately impacted when we go for, you know, face-to-face interview kind of process, and yeah, even like literally walking up to the level 2 entrance where we are. So yeah, we haven't really gotten to that like specific kind of thing. I think also along that branch, we would be doing some UX work with disability services and other kind of points and like parts of the university. So we'd have to kind of think maybe approach them and work with them first.
Disability services basically accommodate any issues that special needs students have. I work with I do cross-team projects where like we're going to be working on Sign Language Week and putting together a big thing across different teams to present something for a specific demographic. But basically the communication between that business unit and us is just open, and so those things are dealt with on an individual basis.
That might be all the time we have for questions left, I reckon, Siobhan.
Yeah, now Sonya, Bridey and Jacinda are all more than happy if you've had a question that you wanted to ask and didn't have the opportunity, or you're like me and it's like a day later you go, darn, I wish I'd asked this. They are all more than happy for you to email them at their workplaces and to start a korero that way. I can vouch for them. They're very friendly. So, yeah. So anyway, once again, I just want to say thank you to our 3 presenters, Jacinda from Otago and Bridey and Sonya from Victoria. And I will now close with a karakia and wish everybody an excellent rest of the Wednesday. Unahia, unahia, unahia ki te uru tapanui, kia wātia, kia māma, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua I te ara tākata. Koera e rongo whakairia ake ki runga, kia tēnā tēnā, hui e tae ki e. Thank you everybody, ka kite.